Okay, Rabotai, we're continuing in the Tzurba Rabbanim. We're in volume 15, and we are holding on page 38. We're in the middle of the Hilchot of Brachot Achronot, and we're going to start tonight's shir with a bracha that we're all familiar with, Borei Nefashot. So, starts the Tzurba Rabbanim by giving us the source of Borei Nefashot. Where in the Talmud do we see the bracha of Borei Nefashot? So start Masech the brachot Daf Mem Daled Amid Bey Amar Yitzchak Bar Avdimi Mishum Rabbeinu Al Habeya. So Beya is right. This is the egg. Beitza Beya. Almine Kufra, and Kufra is a type of meat. Bitchila, in the beginning, what do you mevarech? You say Shahako. Ubasof Borei Nefashot Rabot. So here the Gemara gives us the first source in the Talmud of Borei Nefashot is mentioned here. You say shahako on meat and eggs, and at the end of the meat and eggs, you're going to make a Borei Nefashot. And there's an opinion in the Gemara of a yeraka, but on vegetables, low. On vegetables, you don't say Borei Nefashot. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, I feel yeraka. He said even on vegetables of a maya, but on water, low. Rav Papa Amar, I feel maya. Even on water. Amar Marzutra Avikar Yitzchak Bar Avdimi, Rav Simi Bar Ashi Avid Kravi Yitzchak V'Simonach Chad Ketrei V'Trei Chad. The one who's known by two names did like the one who said it by one name, and one who known by one name did it like the one who said it by two names. Meaning, do you say Borei Nefashot on water and all this? There was different opinions. Rav Ashi and the Lach is like Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, Anan, for myself, Zmina Dechi Mitcharanam Avdina Kekulu. When I remembered, I did it like the opinion of everyone. Meaning he said Borei Nefashot after vegetables, and he said Borei Nefashot after water as well. Okay, says on the next page, on page 39, Tosefot on that page, where Rav Ashi is saying, Avdina Kekulhu, I did like all one. The Chai V'chein Anu Nohagin Kirav Ashi. So Tosefot, the Rishon says, we are noheg like Rav Ashi. The Mivarchen Batar Maya or Batar Yeraka, Borei Nefashot Rabot, not only on meat and eggs, but also on water and vegetables, we say Borei Nefashot. Even after water, we say Borei Nefashot. Now, depending, we're going to see the Gedarim, the how fast you have to drink the water, how much water you have to drink in order to be able to say Borei Nefashot. We'll get to there as the shir progresses. Okay, now we know our nusach of the bracha, right? So our nusach of the bracha, and the Ashkenazic nusach is exactly the same except for the second to last word, right? So the nusach for Borei Nefashot, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Borei Nefashot Rabot V'Chesronana Kol Mashe Berata La'achayot Bahem Nefesh Kol Chai. We say Baruch Chai Ha'olamim, and the Ashkenazim say it with a tzere, and since they say a tzere with an a, so they're going to say Baruch Chai Ha'olamim. That's the real difference between our Borei Nefashot and their Borei Nefashot. However, let's take a look at this Rashba. So there's a Rashba, Shas Tshuva Rashba. Mahu lichtom bebrachot Borei Nefashot Rabot. How do we end off the bracha of Borei Nefashot? Because right now the halacha wasn't established like we have it. But people were doing different things. So he says, Lefi Shari'iti Katub B'Shem Rabbanei Tzarfat. I see the rabbis of France, Shechotmin Ba Baruch Atah Hashem Chai HaOlamim. They said Shem Hashem at the end. He says, I see the rabbis of France ending off, instead of saying Baruch Chai HaOlamim like we say, they say Baruch Atah Hashem Chai HaOlamim. So he's saying, what's the din? The Timahei Milsa. I had a question on this, says the questioner to the Rashba. Imkain, Mipnei Ma Karua Loi Klum. Why was it called Lo Klum? In the Gemara and Brachot, there are places the Gemara says you say no bracha after eating this. And the Gemara says, oh, Lo Klum means Borei Nefashot. So why you're calling it Lo Klum if you're saying a Baruch Atah Hashem at the end? It only makes sense to call it nothing if you don't say Hashem's name at the end, says the questioner. What's the difference in Bein Shalosh? It's a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, the beginning, Baruch Atah Hashem at the end. That's his question to the Rashba. The Rashba says, Ata shamat, ani lo shamat. You heard the rabbis of France saying Baruch Atah Hashem at the end of the bracha. I never heard this. The Rashi said, I don't know what you're talking about, basically. I've never heard this. I never saw anybody who ended it this way. So the Rashi says we don't do it this way. Now, he goes into the question, why is it referred to lo klum? It's because it has no conclusion. This is not a question, as we do refer every bracha with no conclusion as a lo klum. He says, lo klum doesn't mean that there's no Hashem's name at the end, because there's many brachot that doesn't have Hashem's name at the end. There's no Hashem at the end, so we don't call it a lo klum. So nothing, lo klum has nothing to do with there's no Hashem's name at the end. But he says, I never heard anyone say Hashem's name at the end. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, where is this whole idea of putting in Hashem's name at the end come from? Even like in the Bible, there is no Hashem's name at the end of Borei Nefashot. So where is he getting this from? So says Rabbeinu Yonah, another Rishon, Uv Yerushalmi. This is Yerushalmi. This is Gemara Yerushalmi. And Chotem la b'shem, and it ends it there with Hashem's name. It says in the Yerushalmi, Baruch atah Hashem chai ha'olamim. Therefore, that's where they got it from. Baruch atah Hashem chai ha'olamim. Oh, very good. That's what Rabbeinu Yonah is going to say. We're going to say we're not going to make the lacha like Yerushalmi. That's why the Bible never says to say anything at the end, not even Baruch chai ha'olamim. So what do? We do like Yerushalmi and the Bible. Bobby says don't say anything at the end. We do like Yerushalmi, we say it, but we don't say it with Shem Hashem. That's the compromise. So he says over here, V'nira l'moiri, he says I've seen to my Rebbe, Shazeh Meteva Katsur, who V'kivan Shelo Husker B'Talmud Shalanu Lo Nichtam B'Shem. We don't end it with the name misafik because of a suffix. But Noichon Loimer Chasimus Abracha B'Lo Shem B'Nema. He says, therefore, you say without Hashem's name, and therefore, what do you say? Baruch atah Hashem, looking at Melech Haolam, Borei Nefashot B'Mechasron Kol Ma Shebarata, Baruch Chai Ha'olamim. So what do? We do like the Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah does a compromise between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli and says we'll say Baruch Chai Ha'olamim, but we won't say Baruch atah Hashem Chai Ha'olamim. Okay, says the Shulchan Aruch. This is where we get the halacha from. Source 35, page 40. Pero Ta'ilan. Chutz mechamisha saminim, except for the 5 minim, right? The special shiva saminim. B'chol perot adama v'yerokot, and every vegetable. B'chol davar she'en gidulim in haaretz, and anything that doesn't grow from the ground, right? Meat, fish, chicken, right? Bachra achrona shelehem borei nefashot rabot. That's the bracha for them. V'im acha mikol minim elu, and if you ate from all of these, mevarach la'achar kulam bracha achat. Okay, so says the Shulchan Aruch, you say Baruch Chai Olamim, but his other idea here was, what did he say? He says if you ate different things, you ate tons of vegetables, you ate tons of fruits, and you ate tons of meat, you say one Borei Nefashot for them all. Okay, partially we do this, but says it as that's the halacha. Now, Mishnah Brewer brings, interestingly enough, the Dat Hagra. Who's the Gra? Because the Gaon Vilna, right? The Dat Hagra lichtom ba b'shem kimo shemuskar b'Yerushalmi chomakam lo nahagukei. We don't noheg this way, but the Vilna Gaon did say Baruch atah Hashem chei ha'olamim. That's kind of say he would have said chei. So Baruch atah Hashem chei ha'olamim he would have said at the end. The mice is interesting because there's another place where the Vilna Gaon says to say a bracha, no one else says to say a bracha. You know, when you come to watch, the halach is you have to wash your hands before davening, whether it be mincha, whether it be aravit, or shaharit, you have to wash your hands. Or if the call to the Vilna Gaon, you should wash it with a keli, and you have to make a bracha. Always, before every tefillah. We don't paskin like the Vilna Gaon, but again, it seems to be the Vilna Gaon has this running theme that you should make brachot with Hashem's name. That seems to be his forte. Okay, now, Piskei Tshuvot deals with the case like this. And we're not going to go through the Piskei Tshuvot. I'm going to do it in the Alka Joseph instead, just so we should have the final halacha for ourselves. But the idea the Piskei Tshuvot says is as follows. Im alcha b'shota harba minim uverich bracha achrona b'nei nefashot adata lemifta rak min echad. Right? If I ate tons of things, meat, fish, chicken, vegetables and that, and I said Borei Nefashot at the end. But I only had in mind to cover the vegetables, not the fish, not the chicken, not anything else. That's the vegetables. His question is, does it work to cover everything? I didn't have it in my mind. My mind was just for the meat. Borei Nefashot on the meat. And I hate a million different other things. And then Yotzer not. So he says, Pater Hakol. And that is going to be the halacha even for us. That
you conclude your
you concluded your meal, and now you marry Borei Nefashot.
Why? So you're not going to conclude the eating on the specific.
Okay, saying good. Saying good.
After you finish meat, whatever meat, you finish your chicken.
You already received the bracha, and you want to have the tea after that. You have to make bracha on the tea.
I think so.
Yeah. Unless you have in mind.
Amen.
It says here in the Alka Joseph. You drank water and here's an example. You drink water and fruit. So just like this Piskei Teshuvah, and we're not going to go say it again. Even you have kavanah just on the water, or what was it? He had a kavanah just on the fruit. No, once you say Borei Nefashot, it works for everything.
But I repeat now bracha for the.
Oh, you're going to go back to eating again? That's the whole new eating.
Now you want to drink tea after you make the bracha.
I have a cup tea left. I said Borei Nefashot, whatever my house.
So you want to exclude this tea?
You're saying I
say bracha shakol again,
you want to exclude the tea
because I think in my mind tea I'm drinking. I'm doing Nefashot right now, but I'm excluding the tea.
He seems to be saying that it covers everything. And you won't have to say Borei Nefashot again.
But he didn't mind to continue drinking after the bracha. You have to go to work. You take the tea in the car.
Right. So it's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know offhand.
The way I looked before, it said that even if you said Allah Mihya, whatever you ate, you continue drinking tea, you need to say bracha again.
But because I hear you.
The way I learned it, I don't know. You just continue drinking or whatever you have to do.
So you need to do the bracha after you finish the tea.
Right. I'm thinking because that's a different bracha. Because Alam Michya, L'maisa Alam Michya is not on your drink. Like Alam Michya is usually just for right, but the essence of the bracha is only for mizanot. Borei Nefashot covers drink anyway, so maybe when you say Borei Nefashot right away, it covers the drink, and you'll have to make another drop. Okay, I don't know. I don't want to get into it. I don't know. We'll have to look it up. Tzarchian, this is Hashem. We'll look into it after. All right. Now that we went through some of the din of Borei Nefashot, we saw the source. What is the meaning of this bracha? So I'm going to read the translation in English first, and then we'll look at the Tosfos, the Rashba, and the Ben Ish Chai for 3 explanations into the bracha. So in English, it translates as follows: Bracha to Hashem, U'kein Melech Haolam. Fine. Borei Nefashot, who creates, Borei Nefashot Rabot, who creates numerous living things. Okay, Hashem creates many living things. The Chesronan, with all of their needs. Okay, it's a not just a straight translation of the word. We're explaining the word. The chesronan and everything that they need, with all their needs, for all that you created with which to maintain the life of every being. So that's the way they translate it in the city. Let's take a look at Tosfos. Let's take a look at the Rashba. Starts Tosfot. Tosfot is what we said in our siddur. Borei Nefashot Rabba b'chesronim kimo lechem umayim she'efsher b'loihem. That's what it means. It's stuff that we cannot live without, meaning you need to have them. And that's what the bracha means. Hashem, you created all these creatures, and you created the things that we can't live without. And that's the way it's translated in the siddur. Who creates numerous things with all their needs, everything that they need.
I would understand the difference.
Yeah, what would you say?
Everything that he created with the little with the minus thing.
So
the brachot come to complete them. So we are.
So you're saying like the Rashba.
We are part of the creation.
You're saying like the Rashba. So look what the Rashba says. Adarabba. Who mevarach sheborei nefashot shechesrot v'tzrichot l'ma shebara. He's thanking Hashem that we're missing things, and Hashem gives it to us. All right, that's what he's saying. One was saying about the fact that Hashem created beings who lack certain items. We're born missing things. That's what the Rashba said. Right? We had a Torah on this a couple of weeks back, that the truth is stuff that you're lacking is actually a good thing for you, right? And that guy who didn't know how to read or write and he became a multimillionaire, and if he knew how to read and write, he would end up working as a janitor somewhere because that was a qualification to be a janitor, right? Because he couldn't get that job, he ended up being a multimillionaire, right? So that's what the Rashba was saying. That's what you were saying, is that sometimes it's good to be missing something. However, let's take one more look at what the bracha means, and this is a Kabbalistic look, and this comes from the Ben Ish Chai. So the Ben Ish Chai says, "Bebracha achona shehi brichat bar nefashot rabot nirmas tikun nefashot." It's a hint to tikun nefashot. Hamegulgalim b'tzomeach ubal chai ubiminim acherim asher mitgalgalim sham al yidei cheta'am v'hem nitzkenim v'olim mishum b'koyach habracha. He says, Bar Nefashot is a hint to the whole concept of Gilgulim. That stuff come back, and Neshamot come back sometimes into a animal, so it'll be in the meat, sometimes into an egg, sometimes into vegetable, sometimes into fish. If you go back about, 20 years now, when the fish in New Square started to talk, remember it was a big scene, it was did it talk, did it not talk, right? The Ecuadorian guy who was shechting, was cutting it up, says he heard the fish say, cut me up for Shabbos and eat me on Shabbos. It was a big talk back then. So it happened in 2002, I believe, is when it happened. So about 21 years ago. So he says this idea of Gilgulim are found in the bracha. How do you explain the bracha? And this is the explanation. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, bar nefashot rabot. Mibora'av v'chesonim akol ma shebarata, kolomer, al yedei chesonim, because of things that people lack, everyone had to come back according to their sin into another gilgul, into something. Therefore, we have to go and give a nefesh into them by saying the bracha shehu migulel sham baruch hu chai ha'olamim. And through our born nefashot,
the whole idea is ברכת האילנות, לתקן את הנפשות שבעלים, שזה ברכת האילנות.
they're saying similar to born nefashot, right? So it's somehow it's mitakin in the neshama. B'derech klal, right? The Kabbalists like to say this, right? There's tzitzot and the foods and stuff like that. In the yeshiva world, we try to not think about this too much. The Chafetz Chaim was once told, story I wrote down, Chafetz Chaim was once told, Kabbalists say that when you eat the foods and you say a bracha, then tzotzot, the neshama, they come out, they have a tikkun and all that. Chafetz Chaim said, I don't know, there's just too much fancy stuff for me. When I eat food and I make a bracha, I have kavanah that I should have koach to do the avodat HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's his kavanah. So that's my kavanah. I try to, when I eat stuff, I try not to think about the neshamot inside of it. It's going to be too much scary, I'm eating neshamot, I'm making tikkun here. It's easier to eat it and say, this should give me koach to do what I need to do. Okay, now that we know the bracha, we know the translation of the bracha, the Tosfos, the Rashba, the Kabbalistic translation.
But if you understand that there was the Kabbalistic that
yeah.
So if sometimes you skip a bracha, so I will not have a strength now. But if you know that you are Mitaken Nefashot and they need you to do bracha, are you going to be more?
You feel it's more of an obligation.
Yeah,
you have more of a achrayut now. You have more of a chiyuv to do it.
Yeah.
I hear. We should be a little bit more Kabbalistic. I agree. Okay. Now, how much do you have to eat in order to make a bracha achrona? Okay. What's the amount that we have to eat? Can't just, there's a difference between a bracha rishona and a bracha achrona. Bracha rishona, we're going to see, we already know, any amount you eat, you cannot eat it without saying a bracha. You have to make a bracha rishona. Bracha achrona, there is a shi'ur. So let's take a look, starting in Tosfos. Tosfos is talking about a Gemara that says you have to eat a kazayit. You can only make a bracha if you eat a kazayit. Hainu dafka b'bracha shel acharav. D'be'inyan shi'ur. Only after the bracha achrona requires a shi'ur, requires an amount. Aval b'bracha shel lefanav afilu pachot mikashi'ur. Even if you're eating less than a kazayit, the asur liyanot ba'olam hazeh b'lo bracha. Ben le'inyan achila, ben le'inyan shtiya. Tosafot says This is a halacha l'maisa, that in order to eat something or drink something, you have to make a bracha beforehand. You cannot enjoy something without saying a bracha. But a bracha achona needs a shiur, needs an amount. Says the Rif in source 42, another Rishon. Amr B'chir bar Abba, ani ra'iti et Rebbe Yochanan she'achol zayit meliach. He ate a pickled olive, okay? Uvarach alav tchila v'sof. And he made a bracha, he ate one olive, and he made a bracha ha'etz, and then he made a bracha at the end, al eitz al pri-eitz, okay? Sheminon mine, we learn from this, the chol hecha de'ika kazayit, anything that has a kazayit, v'yi bracha tchila v'sof. It needs a bracha beginning at the end. Aval hecha deleka kazayit, but if you don't have a kazayit, v'yi bracha she'asel adam lahanot min ha'olam hazeh klum b'lei bracha u'v'sof loy b'lei bracha. So says the Rif, based on this Gemara in brachot, that you need a kazayit in order to say a bracha. Okay, a kazayit we're going to translate right now as 27 grams. We're going to get into more of the calculation of the kazayit shortly, but that is the idea. You need to have eaten 27 grams. Says the Shulchan Aruch in source 43 on page 44. Ha'ochel pachot mekazayit ben mipat ben mishar ochlim. Doesn't make a difference. If you ate less than a kazayit, whether it be bread, whether it be vegetable, anything you ate, or if you drank less than a revi'it, we're not talking about time now, just talking about the volume. Ben miyayin ben mishar mashkin, whether it's wine or any other drink, mevarech techila bracha haroel otah hamin, balacharav eno mevarech tila. You don't make a bracha if you don't eat a kazayit before. You always make a bracha. Bracha yishana always, but bracha alchona is going to require a shear, and require a kazayit when it comes to food, and it's going to require a revi'it when it comes to liquids. Okay. We're going to talk about kazayit in a minute, how we actually measure it and stuff like that. I'm not a bucky in these things, but I'm going to read a little bit what it says in a minute. Okay. We're going to see. Everything's going to come in a minute. Okay. Now, we know we have to eat a kazayit in order to make a bracha achronah. How fast do we have to eat this kazayit? Okay. It's all based really on a Gemara Masechet Yoma. This is one of the sources for this. And this, everybody knows. Anyone who's dealt with halachot of Yom Kippur, right? There are people, for example, that get a little difficult. They cannot fast on Yom Kippur. Well, so they have to eat, right? So there's a way they have to eat. Meaning we don't tell them just to make a full seudah and eat regularly, because it's a halacha, the oraita, you have to fast. So we tell them to eat small amounts and to wait a certain amount of time in between, right? And what's pshat in this, the Gemara in Yoma tells us, is because you have to eat things within a certain amount of time, kedei achilas pras, in order for it to be considered one achila. In order to be considered one consumption, you have to eat it within a certain amount of time. So this plays back to bracha achrona as well, right? So on Yom Kippur, what do they say? They say to eat a certain amount, and you wait 9 minutes. And after 9 minutes, you can eat another certain amount. And this way, the two foods never combine. So if you never ate the shear of eating on Yom Kippur, you were never transgressed eating on Yom Kippur. That's the idea on Yom Kippur. Okay, so how does it work on bracha achrona now? Same idea. In order to be hayam, if we have in the bracha achrona, you have to have eaten the food, the kazayit, within a kedei achilas pras, within the time that it usually takes to eat a half a loaf of bread. Okay, now what's the number of that? Some machlokit in the poskim. It can range anywhere between 2 to 9 minutes, 4 minutes, stuff like that. The Yalkut Yosef usually goes with his magic number of 7.5. For 7.5 minutes is what we Sfaradim usually go by. You have to eat a kazayit, the kedei achilas pras, which means within 7.5 minutes. So 27 grams within 7.5 minutes. If you didn't do that, there is no chiyuv in a bracha achrona. Okay. So he did the Yom Kippur outside. That's Maseches Yoma over here. And he deals with the the dates and eating a kedei achilas pras, kezai b'kedei achilas pras, v'chotevet b'kedei achilas pras, and we pass in Yom Kippur. It's a kotevet b'kedei achilas pras that would be the transgressing. But now let's take a look at the Mogen Avram. This goes back to our halachas over here. V'im achol me'at v'chazer v'achol me'at im shahal yoter michdei achilas pras nearly the end mitzdaref. It doesn't combine. The way we find it in Siman 612, the Chemai B'Yoma, that's what we just have the Gemara on the other page, that it doesn't combine. That if you eat, the guy washes his hands, eat the bread, and this can happen very likely on Shabbat Su'udot. That's what we talked about as halacha here. People come, they wash their hands, they make a bracha, and they start to eat. They eat a little bit of bread. And then they go for the salad, they go for this, and they go for that, and they go for that. 20 minutes later, they take another piece of bread, small piece of bread. And they've never eaten 27 grams within 7.5 minutes of each other. He is now has no obligation in Birkat HaMazon. And if he says Birkat HaMazon, bracha lebatala. He just said 4 brachot for no reason.
Even though that you wash and you make
Yep. No hiyuv until you ate 27 grams within 7.5 minutes. It's Magen Avraham.
What is the middle distance?
As long as you ate it sometime, if you ate 27 grams within 7.5 minutes, anytime during your Su'udah, that's fine.
You have to be associated to that or no? Is it 27 grams enough to say Birkat HaMazon?
Remember, the Rabbanan, you can say Birkat HaMazon once you ate 27 grams within 7.5 minutes. I don't care when in the Su'udah you did it, but it's best to do it right in the beginning. This way you know it's done. Okay? But you have to have eaten some point 27 grams within 7.5 minutes. Otherwise, there's no chiyuv, Birkat HaMazon, no chiyuv or bracha achona. You don't have to say anything. Okay? It's bracha lebatala. And it's no chiyuv. No chiyuv de Rabbanan, no chiyuv de nothing. So it's really a bracha lebatala. Okay. All right. Now comes the issue with drinks. How much you have to drink and how fast you have to drink it. So food, we said 27 grams within 7.5 minutes. What about shtiyah? What about drinking? So says the Mishnah Berurah, V'linyan shtiyat revi'it. Well, you know it has to be a revi'it. Okay, revi'it is about 3 ounces, 81 cc. So it's about 3 ounces, 3.1 ounces for Sfaradim. Ashkenazim maybe 3.5. They have maybe a little bit more. Chazon Ish 5 point something. Okay, for us about 3.1 ounces. Small cup, right? The cup is usually 7 ounces, so about half the cup, right? Im shata, if he drank vehefsik me'at, v'chazer v'shata ad shehishlam revi'it, and then he quickly finished the revi'it. Yesh omud de'enu mitztaref, v'yesh omud de mitztaref. Some say it does not combine, and some says it does combine. So here, this is my Borei Priagafen, right? So I drank a little bit, and I stop, and I drink again. Does those 2 drinkings combine to 1 revi'it or not? He says some say yes, some say no. What's the machlokin in? What's it in? So the question is, the question is, do we say it's kedei achilas pras, the time it takes to eat half a loaf of bread? That means you have 7.5 minutes to drink this cup in order to be considered a revi'it? Or do we say when it comes to a revi'it, how long does it take to drink 3 ounces? If I drink 3 ounces in one shot, how long would it take? Or is it that? Meaning, does the kedei, what's the whole point of kedei achilas pras? It usually takes to eat a half a loaf 7.5 minutes. So you have to eat the kazai within 7.5 minutes, because that's the normal amount it takes to eat that amount. When it comes to drinking, do I say I also have 7.5 minutes just like food? Or do I say it takes to drink a revi'it 2-3 seconds, and that's all the time I have? And if I stop in between 2-3 seconds, then no longer it's going to be mitzdaref, and I cannot make a bracha achona on that drink. Okay, so now let's take a look at the halacha.
The same concept of motivation that you eat less than 25 grams.
It is the same concept.
Yes,
Same concept. Question is, do we say by drink the time is like food, or we say by drink the time is like drink? So here's the halacha now. Very good. Let's take a look at the halacha in the Yalkut Yosef. He doesn't bring it here in the Tzurba. So clearly, Therefore, I'm going to bring it over here. Look what he says over here. I'm going to read it to you in Hebrew and in English. Someone drinks a drink. It's a very small amount of time. It's just a mere few seconds. If you drink 3 ounces in one shot, and within a few seconds, then you make a bracha achrona. If you drink it, I mean, you took a sip and then another sip right away. Fine, we can say that's still part of it. But if it was longer than that, I took my sip and I stopped, and then I took another sip. That's it. It's no longer connecting. You can drink a whole cup, and you're not gonna make a bracha achrona like that because the revi'it never combined because it's too long in between.
The law, not to do the bracha achrona al yain,
Okay.
the mitzvah last in revi'it. So this is what I want to do.
Right. So
but if a person drink more than revi'it, then you're required to do.
Then the bracha achrona. If he drinks it in a shot, but now we're saying if he drinks it like this, and then another thing, and he takes time in between, also no bracha achrona. So now the question goes: what about drinking tea and coffee? Okay, what's pshat in tea and coffee? Says the Mishnah Berurah, regarding drinking tea and coffee, the norm is to drink it when it's hot, and it's difficult to drink it without a pause, only a sip at a time. So there's a great debate among poskim if one makes a bracha achrona. Do you make one or not? So according to the Yalkut Yosef, you're not going to make a bracha achrona on coffee or tea because you're drinking it and you're taking too long in between. So you never mitzvah for the revi'it. So there's no chiyuv in a bracha achrona, so you're not allowed to make a bracha.
Coffee.
Ken? Let's take a look. Take a look at the next source. Yalkut Yosef, 47.
So you never make the bracha achrona on coffee or tea?
That's right.
Coffee is sometimes cold.
So you're talking about iced coffee. That's different. That's different dinim. עכשיו, השתה כוס תה או כוס קפה ועודם חמים, while it's still hot, אין הוא מברך אחר שתייה ברכה בורא נפשות רבות. No בורא נפשות. You don't make. פועל הוא שותה את התה והקפה לאט לאט, ושאול בעיניים יותר משיר כדי שתהיה רביעית בבת אחת, וכן מנהגנו. And that is our minhag, says Chacham Yitzchak Yosef in the Yalkut Yosef. Even though some say you really have 7.5 minutes to drink it. That says the Yalkut Yosef beferush, drinking hot tea or hot coffee, or it's so hot that you can't drink it in one shot, then you make no bracha achrona because you're taking too long. Now he talks about what happens if it cools down somewhat, and those who have accustomed to recite Borei Nefashot after coffee has cooled down and drink a quarter lug at once have who to rely on. So what happened? I was drinking such a hot call. I was drinking the hot tea, hot coffee, whatever it was, and now I'm left at the end. It's already cold, and I have 3 ounces in there, and I take a shot of it, and I drink it all in one shot. So now he's saying there are those who say you can say Borei Nefashot because I drank a revi'it at the end. And then he says, but nonetheless, someone who asks should be taught, even in this case, even if you drink the last 3 ounces quickly, you still don't make a bracha in bracha achrona. If he's not thirsty, he shouldn't take water. Okay, so that's what he says about coffee. He says you're drinking the coffee even at the end, and you drink it in one shot. You still don't make a bracha achrona. That's a big chiddush over here. They says if you drink a warm or cool tea, then you could say Borei Nefashot. He makes a distinction between coffee and tea. I'm not entirely sure why he's making this distinction between coffee and tea, but that's what he is doing. Let me see if I found anything here. Okay. Meanwhile, let's continue. We continue with halacha hey over here on page 47, the Yalkut Yosef. One who drinks hot soup with a spoon, not during a meal, right? He's just taking regular soup. Does not recite Borei Nefashot afterwards, because it's just like tea and coffee. You're drinking it, the soup. You're taking a long time to drink it. Also, one because Chavavaji holds ice cream is a liquid. So also, if you eat ice cream with a teaspoon, right, or one who licks ice cream in a cone, he does not say Borei Nefashot on the ice cream because you're not eating the ice cream so fast. You have to ice cream. Horn Chavavaji is a liquid, and therefore, in order to be able to say Borei Nefashot, you have to eat 3 ounces of ice cream in one shot, and you can't do that. So there's no bracha achona. But one who drinks cold water or cold soda, and he drinks it at once, he does say Borei Nefashot because he could drink it. But if the water is extremely cold, that you can't drink it so fast, then again, you won't say Borei Nefashot. Then he brings interesting, arak. You're drinking arak. If you drink a revi'it of arak in one shot, right? Arak is like alcohol. You don't make bracha achrona afterwards. Okay, so Chacham Ovadia is very clear, right? Yaakov Yosef, who's bringing his father, is very clear. Drinks does not go with Kedei Achil's pas, not 7.5 minutes. It has to be revi'it in a few seconds in order to be mechuyav in a bracha achrona. Halacha brura. This is Rabbi David Yosef, another son of Chacham Ovadia. But he says, this is only for tea. So here's explaining the Yalkut Yosef. Why did we say coffee, even at the end, you don't make a bracha achrona at the end? Because the way you drink coffee is when it's very hot. That's a real coffee drinker. I'm assuming this is like the Turkish coffee and stuff like that the Sephardim would like to drink in Israel. Like this is something you have to drink hot. You don't drink it cold. Once it's cold, it's gone. It's nothing. Therefore, you never drink, and therefore you never make a bracha achron on it. But if you drink cold tea, you drink what at least a revi'it in one shot. Where it's instant coffee that is cooled down. Today it isn't minhag to drink iced coffee, cold coffee. Therefore, we're going to say today on iced coffee, we're going to say Borei Nefashot. So it really depends on how it's. So halacha brura, David Yosef Shlita is saying it depends how something is used. Tea, real coffee, is drinking hot. Therefore, even if you waited for it to cool down, you're not making a bracha achrona because it doesn't go how you drink it, but how it's drunk, how it's usually people drink it. That's what he's saying. And therefore, even if you drink it cold, when it's already cooled down, you're not making bracha achrona on it. But tea and iced coffee and these type of things that you do drink cold, then you will make a Borei Nefashot on it. Okay, here he has an interesting thing from the Chakum Mamtakim, and he brings down from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. It's kind of like a story over here. When our teacher Shlomo Zalman was asked about his Rebbe, Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, the Rosh Hashiva Eitz Chaim, he related the ruling of his Rebbe, Rav Chaim of Brisk. He said as follows: after the Brisker Rav Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik of Brisk made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, he came to visit Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, and during the visit, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, when I was there, Rav Isser Zalman gave the Av Bet Din of Brisk. He gave Rav Yitzchak Zev of Brisk, Rav Soloveitchik. He gave him a hot cup of tea, and when he saw that when he finished drinking it, Rav Soloveitchik said a bracha achrona. So Rav Isser Zalman said to Rav Soloveitchik, but don't we say we don't make a bracha achrona on hot drinks because we're not drinking it, we eat in one shot? So the Brisker Rav said to him, this is true, but my father, Rav Chaim Brisk, he had a minhag to say the bracha. From that time on, Rav Isser Zalman also started to say bracha achrona. And he said, I started to make the bracha. And he says, I heard from Rav Hagoyin Rav Yitzchak Hacker, Rosh Hashiva Grodna, and one of the great students of our Rebbe, that when our Rebbe finished the story, he said that he was always bothered How could the halacha be that you enjoy a hot cup of tea, a hot cup of coffee, and you don't say a bracha achrona afterwards? It's not right. You enjoyed it. You should say a bracha achrona. Therefore, he started saying it, and he held that you need 7.5 minutes to drink a rivi'it. And that's the way a lot of Ashkenazim are posek today, and are nohek today, that they make a bracha achrona after hot coffee. Not all of them, but some of them. There's machokes by Ashkenazim also. Mishnah Berurah already brought that down. But the majority of them, I think, from what I understand from here, is that they would say a bracha achrona after drinking a cup of tea, cup of hot coffee. We, on Sfaradim, on the other hand, if it's the derech usually to be drunken only hot, so no matter how you drink it, you don't say a bracha achrona, unless it's something that you could drink cold.
So if you see somebody make a bracha or doesn't make bracha, yesh lo smoke.
Yes, yesh lo smoke. And if someone asks you what's the halacha, you can tell them the Sephardic halacha is so and so, and we don't make it. Right. Okay. Now comes one of the most interesting parts of how do you measure a kazayit. So up until now, we've told you a kazayit is 27 grams. What does this really mean? What does it mean? What was the word kazayit? Kazayit means like an olive, right? So what does it mean? Shir kazayit yesh omrim dehu kehatzi betza, says Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says it's the size of a half an egg, right? Now the question is, how much is a half an egg? What's the size of an egg? Page 50. What's the size of an egg that you tell me what's a half an egg? So the Penina Halacha, or Lezer Melamed, Shlita, he goes through this and says the kazayit is the same as the common olive. And therefore you don't have to measure it. You know what it is. Others say kazayit equals half an egg. How much is a half an egg? So Rav Chaim Na'eh, he lived 100 years ago, less than 100 years ago. He actually was he lived in Eretz Yisrael, but he was sent. He's famous for measurements, by the way. Everything you learn, Rav Chaim knows shita and measurements. This shita and the Chazon Ish shita. By the way, he lived in Bukhara and Samarkand. He at one point he was a shliach for Lubavitch or something like that. He ended up there for a long time. Rav Chaim Noeh. It's interesting. When I told Rav Tzion this, he didn't believe me. I said, go read his history. He was living there for many years. This is going back in when the first Olim of Bukhara came to Eretz Yisrael, in the 20s, I think, 30s, yeah, 30s, 40s. So he has all the measurements, and he says an egg is 57 cc's. Okay, so half an egg is 27. I don't know how that's half. Oh, he says without the shell. Okay, an egg with the shell, without the shell, you do all the measurements. According to the Mishnah Berurah, with the shell is 29. It says the custom is to count it as 27. Now, Rabotai, we keep saying 27 cc's. What's a cc? What's a cubic centimeter? How do you measure it? So this is something, and the Yalkut Yosef goes through this by Arichos, but I just want to do it just to give us an idea what it is. So in science, if you ever gone to school, we have something called volume, something called mass. Volume and mass. What's the difference between volume and mass? Oh, good. Say. Very good. Piece. And you put it in. Displacement. Whatever gets displaced by the piece, that's the volume. The space it takes up. That's volume. Okay? Weight is when you weigh something, how much heavy it is. The shiurim in the Torah are usually measured in volume. So you have to figure out the displacement of it. How much space does it take? Now, how does this play further in halacha? Take a piece of bread. Take a rye piece of bread, or take a sourdough piece of bread. Open the bread. What do you see inside the bread? You see air spaces, right? You can't count air spaces. Air spaces are empty. It's displacement. So the actual physical space that takes away water. Air space doesn't take away water. So what you have to do is crumble it up. You have to crumble up the piece of bread and then put it in the water to displace it and find 27 cc's based on that. Okay, that's the true way of checking it. We don't do that. We say, and the truth is, a lot of things, its volume does equal its mass. Not everything. Stuff that are more sugary, it's usually more heavier, right? Stuff that are more airy will be less heavier. But derech klal, most apples, fruits, and stuff like that, their volume does equal the mass. And that's why, but derech klal, we say whatever it weighs, we assume it to be the value. But technically, it's not, right? You have to actually crumble the piece up, put it into water, and see how much water gets displaced. That's how you measure stuff halachically.
That's how they measure the matzah, no? For Pesach.
That's
For the seder. They crumble
anything
it up.
That's right. Anything that's d'oraita that needs to be measured, that's the way you're going to measure it. You have to measure by volume. You'll put it together, you crumble it up, you throw it into the water, put it into the water, and you see how much water gets displaced. And that's how you'll know how much it actually is. That's how you figure it out. Now, we don't do that. And with derech klal, we just say everything equals, volume equals its mass, more or less. Estimated pretty much the same. Right? And in ounces, you have a dry ounce and you have a liquid ounce. It's a difference between how you measure it. A lot of times we just go by the dry. But people don't realize there are differences in how you measure things scientifically as well as halachically. That's how you really measure things. He says over here, further in Pnei Halacha on page 51, there's a difference also of what we consider half an egg. So he says over here, V'yesh ma'achroni Ashkenaz shesavru sha'beitzim shel yameinu hitkatenu lekechatzi. They are only half of the real size. So that's what Ashkenazim always come with the bigger shita, because they say today's egg is only half of a real egg. So if you need half of a real egg, you have to double the amount. So it's the size of an actual egg. That's why their shitot are so much bigger. But we Sfaradim don't really say like that. We don't even pay attention to this. We don't say eggs changes and stuff like that. Well, this is the egg, half of this egg. That's our shita. That's the Sfaradim shitas are usually smaller. That's why we can go away with 3.1 ounces to drink for wine. That's why we have 27 grams, and all these our shitas are smaller, because we don't say what they say about the egg change, right? He says, interesting. Even the Chazayin Ish, shechizek shita zo ad shenikrat al shemo. In fact, all the big shitot in the world are called the Chazayin Ish shita, right? That's what they're called. Always Chazayin Ish shita is bigger, right? Even though he's the one who always held it a bigger shita, Hiskim, he held Shil'inyan Kizayit Zu Chumra. It's only a Chumra. To do what he said to do, 50 grams or whatever it is, he said this is a Chumra. Really, you don't have to go that much. He shared Bracha Achorna who al Kizayit Hamotzi Be'otodor. The Kizayit of today's generation, that's the Kizayit that we make a Bracha Achorna for us. Even the Chazon Ish, who's always quoted as being the biggest shear, held for Bracha Achorna, you go with today's shear. So for us, 27 grams. You could do it by weight, although it's really volume, but we do rely on the weight. And 27 grams of something will get us to do the bracha achrona. So here in the Zot Bracha, he brings some ideas to get an idea how much is something in grams, how much cc's. He says plastic bottle caps used in standard soda bottles is usually 10 cc. 2 caps is about 20. Box of matches commonly sold in Eretz Yisrael. This is back in his day, so it's not actually today. It's actually probably smaller today because now everybody's saving on plastic and on wood and all that, right? So the repackaging, like you go to Costco, everything today is new packaging, 85% less plastic. So in his day, it was 33 cc's. A slice of bread in the middle of the loaf contains about 125 cc. So depending where you take it from. Okay, so we saw already how to calculate. That's the idea. So you need to eat 27 grams. Now, there's one more idea that we're going to learn before we finish our Borei Nefashot halachot for today. And this is the idea of a birya. What's meant to birya? What's a birya? Birya is a whole piece. Meaning, I have grapes in front of me, right? I'm eating a whole piece of grape. You're right, it's less than a kazayit. But maybe once I eat a whole piece, since it's a davar hashuv, it's its own thing, maybe it also requires a bracha achona. Maybe a birya is something separate. We have an halacha like this, right? We have an halacha in Isser v'Heter that if a birya falls into a soup, right? If a piece of fly falls into the soup, you have to take the fly out. Otherwise, the whole thing becomes asur, right? That's why you have your vegetables, one little fly. What do you mean? It's batal b'shishim. No. Since it's a birya, it's its own creation, it's a real piece. It doesn't be mevatel. You can't mevatel it. So there is an inyan of birya. So does it apply to brachot as well? So says the Talmud Yerushalmi. Yochanan once took an olive, and he recited a bracha beforehand and afterward. We saw this already from the Ran, but let's take a look now. Rachia Bar
Okay.
was watching him, and Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "Babylonian, why are you looking at me?" Because he took an olive and he said bracha ha'etz, and then made ein shalosh ha'etz up your etz. And Rabbi Yochanan was looking at him, so he said, "Why are you looking at me? Don't you hold of the rule that anything of the 7 species requires a bracha beforehand and afterward? It needs a bracha." So the Gemara says, Eisla, he does hold of it. But why was he questioning it? Since when you take out the seed, there's now less than a kazayit. You take out the pit from a kazayit, there's now less than a kazayit. A kazayit is with the pit. He took out the pit, he's eating it. So he ate less than a kazayit. So why is he saying a bracha? Rabbi Yochanan should not have said a bracha. Does he not hold that the seed makes it less than the requisite size? Now it's less than a kazayit. So the Gemara answers, what did he hold? Since it's a biriya, mishum biriya, since it's a biriya, since he ate a whole olive, and it's a whole thing in itself, so even though it's less than a kazayit, he's going to make a bracha achrona. That's the Yerushalmi. So here he say, Shekain afilu acha preda achat shel anav. He eats one piece of grape, or preda achat shel rimon, one seed of a pomegranate. Shehu toem bracha lefanei v'lachareya. So from this story, we want to say, it's not the halacha l'maisa, but it's from this story, the Yerushalmi wants to say, if you eat a birya, if you eat an actual olive, a whole grape, a whole rimon, you got to make a bracha achrona because it's a special piece. Okay, now our Bavli says the same story and has a whole different answer what happened over here. You'll find this a lot throughout Shas, Yerushalmi, and Bavli. There's 2 stories, same story, 2 different answers of what happened. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan, how did he make a bracha? Kivan the shkil the girnia, but tsarle sheura. Since the pit was removed, it lacks the amount of a kazayit. It's less than a kazayit. Amarle misvarat kazayit gadol b'inan. Who said you need to have a large olive? Kazayit benoni b'inan. You only need a medium olive. And my olive was big, and I took off the pit, and now it's like a medium olive, and therefore it's a medium kazayit. And therefore I said bracha achrona. So what comes out? Our Bavli doesn't even talk about birya. Doesn't even mention about, oh, maybe you have to make a bracha achrona after you eat a piece of grape or piece of, doesn't even mention it. It's not in our Bavli. A whole different answer. He had a kazayit. It was just a different kazayit, different sizes. So Tosafot picks up on this. So Tosafot knows Yerushalmi and Bavli, and he brings it in. And he says, Meshum de bivriya mivarchen afil pachot mikazayit. The cholik al gemara didan. The mashmahacha. And it's arguing, the Yerushalmi is arguing with our Gemara. So machok, Yerushalmi and Bavli. And like Rabbi Yinon said before, you're going to go with the Bavli, right? Rabbi Yossi is going to try to explain how there's no machok between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. He tries to explain it. But for our understanding, and in the beginning of Tosfot, is that there's a machok, Yerushalmi and Bavli doesn't bring down Bidya. Says the Bet Yosef in source 57, Bet Yosef is bringing the riff. Katav stam de kol hechad deleka kazayit loy bebracha lesop v'lo chiluk ben davar shehu birya ledavar she'enu birya. He says the riff doesn't make a difference if it's a birya or not. The riff is an important halachic work, a rishon that we follow, and he doesn't say anything about birya bebracha achrona. V'chein harambam, and so too the Rambam. The Rambam also doesn't say anything. And it seems to them, the Rif and the Rambam, that they hold the Bavli is arguing with the Yerushalmi. Like commonly Kavesa, and the Lach is not like them. It says the Bet Yosef, in his Bet Yosef, the Rambam and the Rif are like our Gemara. They argue with the Yerushalmi. There's no bracha achrona in birya. But there are those who are worried about it. So therefore, don't eat one grape. Eat a kazayit of grapes. Because there's a machloket, you have to make a bracha achrona on the birya or not. So don't eat one grape. Eat 27 grams of grapes.
What do you do with the last one?
You won't make a bracha achrona then. Says the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Shulchan Aruch in source 58. What? I don't know. You have to measure it. I'm not good at measuring. If something is in a way that it was originally made in nature, piece of grape or a seed of the pomegranate, says the Shulchan Aruch, don't eat a birya less than a kazayit, says the Shulchan Aruch. Now, the Ramah says, what's considered a birya? The law mikra birya elim achul kemot shehu. You have to eat it the way it is, whole. But if you take out the seed, it's not called a birya. So that's what the Ramah says. The Ramah says, if you're not eating it whole, it's not considered a birya. You have to eat the whole thing. So it works with the grape because you can eat the whole grape.
What about the date?
So he says no. I know the Gemara talks the whole case is about the date, right? And Ramah says no. But take out the seed, it's not called a birya. Right? The Shalmi seems to be, even if it is, it's still a birya, but he says it's not.
Yeah, it means swallow as a whole or bite into when it's in the mouth.
He needs to eat the whole thing.
He
needs to eat the whole thing. He needs to eat the whole thing. I don't
The
think
whole
he has
thing
to.
at once.
Yeah. Everything that's in there, he has to eat it.
Swallow it also. Okay. Got it.
No, he can eat it in separate pieces. He can bite on it. He can take a bite.
So it's considered as yel de bria?
I don't know. I think so. Let's see. Maybe he'll say different. Let's see. Right now, I'm understanding it that way.
Because if he eats it with his teeth, it hasn't gained none. He broke it in half. So it's not really
But he's
whole.
eating the whole thing. He's eating the whole thing, no?
I thought it was like, the way I understood it, swallowed it. No?
Okay, let's see. Maybe you're right. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Amifnei chashivoteya. Says maybe saying like you, but if you ground it up beforehand, I don't know about biting in it, but saying if you ground it up, meaning you made it into a mash, then it's not a birya. Right? Birya has to be somewhat whole. Kemochu, the hainu im hagiriin, even with its seed, even its pit. Va'afil im hagiriin enu rayu la'achol klal, kivan sha'al panim bala kulo. If you swallowed it whole, if you swallow the whole date with the pit, it's a birya. That's your case. It's not possible. Right? Aval in lakach, but if one removed, v'chol im nechtach me'at ma'aperi gufa, or if one cut off a bit of the fruit itself, v'mnafli many kitzad like they bishul, or if you bit, and if you bit off a bit, if a bit fell off by being cooked, k'moshe regilut hu hit parper, gam kein nira she'ein zeh, it's only made of shembriya. Then it's no longer a birya. So says Mishnah Berurah, if you want to cut off a bit, meaning you not eating the whole bit, he says you cut it off, so you're not eating that piece, right? For example, some people do this. They cut off the top of the grape, and because the bugs are usually found on the top of the grape, so they'll cut off the top of the grape to get rid of the bugs, right? So now you're not eating the whole grape. You only have most of the grape. That's not a birya because you're missing a piece, right? Same thing if you cook the fruit. When you cook a fruit, pieces start to come off it. It gets lost in the cooking process. Not a birya. Right, disintegrates. Okay. Shalos Tshuva, the Hart Tzvi, or Tzvi Pesach Frank, and he says, in the Yerushalmi mentioned above, it says that a birya does not require a kazayit. I was not sure if that is specific for 7 species or for all fruits that we say this. When they say birya, according to the Yerushalmi, where you have to make a bracha achona on the birya, is that only on shivat haminim or that on all fruit? Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'hu adin, also on blueberries. Achat or ketaniot achat, I don't know, yigada, whatever he calls them, yagda. So also on blueberries. So the Mishnah says, doesn't matter shivat haminim or not, anything's a birya, even a blueberry is a birya. The question Yerushalmi would apply there as well. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. He also says the same thing. You can go through the whole thing, but he says the same thing. The birya would apply to everything, any type of fruit, any type of thing. Okay, now we come to Ben Zion Abba Shaul in the Or Letzion. Okay, he says over here, a slice of citrus fruits, including the smaller slices inside, are considered a birya on their own. They open an orange, right? And you know they have like the pieces, separate pieces. Each piece is a birya. Each piece of that orange, that slice, same thing. Every seed is a birya. That's what he's saying here. Therefore, he says, what did he say? The end. Halach shalem, a garin shalem, elim kin ochel mehem kazayit. Or sheyichtoch mehem me'at, or you take off a little bit. Because you don't want to get into that place that you ate a birya, and maybe now you have to say a bracha achrona. Okay, he brings now the Peskei Tshuvot. Peskei Tshuvot also deals with removing seeds. If they're edible, not edible, doesn't remove its birya, it's not a birya. And he says, like the Ramah, that if you remove even an unedible seed, it's still considered not a birya. It's a machloket back and forth. Comes finally on page 58, the Yalkut Yosef. And this is for us, halacha l'maaseh. What does Mitzvah Yosef say? Ha'ochel pachot mikazayit. Ben mipat ben mishar ochlim. V'chein ha'shoteh pachot mirvi'it. Ben miyayin ben mishar mashkim. Mevarach tchila bracha haro'eh lo'ot hamin. V'la'acharav en mevarach klal. Afilu imachal bria shlema. Kegon gargir shel anav o shel rimon. Even then you don't make a bracha achrona. But however, the proper conduct is not to eat the birya if you're eating less than a kazayit, because there is the Yerushalmi, and there are Rishonim who hold that way. So it's best to avoid that situation. And if you're eating, you should eat a whole piece. Interestingly, like Malkiel said over here, so in the Yalkut Yosef, in this version that I have here on page 246, outside of the Tzurba, he says like Malkiel said over here. And Malkiel, you said very good. He says, what does he say? You take the full grape, right? One piece of grape, make the bracha. You should not eat the whole thing in one shot. You should cut it with your teeth. You eat a little bit. So he says like you, Malkiel. He says that what? If you eat it a little bit and then you eat it again, it's not a birya. It seems to be, he says this is actually from the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai says in order to be birya, you have to have eaten the whole thing whole. You got to put the whole thing in your mouth.
If you eat one, two bread, right? If you eat two, three, four, then no problem.
Yeah. So then
I'm glad you can do it.
So he says the Ben Ish Chai mentioned that in Baghdad it was common to eat dried currants. These fruits are very tiny and it'd be very difficult to bite each one in half. Therefore, he ruled that if someone does not plan to eat a kazayit of these fruits, he should refrain from taking them. The same applies to all such fruits or seeds. He's saying if you're not planning to eat a kazayit of blueberries, you shouldn't eat it. A kazayit of fruits, yeah. If you just want to have a couple of blueberries, you shouldn't eat them. Says the Ben Ish Chai. Lahalacha, if you did eat them, you don't make a bracha achrona. That's the ikar adin. But to stay away from this machloket, Bali Yerushalmi, we say don't eat something that's a birya unless you're going to eat a kazayit, and then you'll be able to make a bracha achrona. Okay, Rabotai, this ends off Borei Nefashot. A lot of chidushim. As is Hashem, next week we'll continue with Tfilas, Hilchos Tfilas Adar. All right. Thank you very much.